The term white, as a racial classification, has a complex history. It wasn't always a common identifier for people of European descent. The concept of whiteness began to take shape in the late 17th century, particularly in colonial America. Early colonial laws distinguished between European settlers and African slaves, setting the stage for racial hierarchies. Initially, white described the English and other Northern Europeans. Over time, it expanded to include various other European ethnic groups. This broadening was linked to social, economic, and political factors. The creation of whiteness was a deliberate attempt to solidify power. Defining who was white enforced a racial hierarchy that justified exploitation. Understanding the term white helps us see how constructed these racial categories are. Racism is not dead, but it is on life support, kept alive by politicians, race hustlers, and people who get a sense of superiority from denigrating others. This powerful statement underscores the persistent shadow of white supremacy. It is a belief system with deep historical roots. White supremacy began during the Age of Exploration. European powers like Spain, Portugal, and Britain embarked on global conquests. They propagated the idea of racial hierarchy to justify their imperial ambitions. The transatlantic slave trade was justified by the notion that Africans were inferior. Understanding its historical origins is crucial in unraveling the myths that surround it today. White supremacy did not remain static. It evolved in response to changing social and political landscapes. In the 19th century, pseudoscientific racism gained prominence. Figures like Samuel Morton and his skull measurements sought to prove racial hierarchies. Morton's work has been debunked, but it fueled racist ideologies. These ideas justified segregation in the United States and colonial rule in Africa and Asia. The so-called scientific backing gave white supremacy a veneer of legitimacy. The 20th century saw white supremacy manifest in more overt and violent forms. The Ku Klux Klan, Nazi Germany, and apartheid in South Africa are stark reminders. These regimes and groups committed atrocities in the name of racial purity and superiority. Despite global movements for equality and civil rights, white supremacy persists. It has morphed into more subtle forms, often embedded in systemic structures. Recognizing this evolution is essential for addressing the present-day ramifications. White supremacy is often shrouded in myths disguised as science. One pervasive myth is the idea of racial purity. Genetics, however, tells a different story. Human beings are 99.9% genetically identical. The concept of race is more social than biological. Another myth is the belief in intellectual superiority based on race. Studies asserting racial differences in intelligence have been methodologically flawed. Modern science asserts that environment, education, and socio-economic factors play significant roles in intellectual development. The idea that certain races are biologically predisposed to certain behaviors is also untrue. Human behavior is complex and influenced by a myriad of factors. Simplistic racial explanations fail to capture this complexity. Debunking these myths is crucial. It undermines the pseudoscientific basis of white supremacy. Science supports the view that all human beings are fundamentally equal. This knowledge is a powerful tool against racial discrimination. The belief in white supremacy has far-reaching societal consequences. It perpetuates inequality and injustice, as societies structured around racial hierarchies limit opportunities for marginalized groups. This systemic racism is evident in education, employment, and the criminal justice system. Ethically, white supremacy is indefensible. It devalues human lives based on arbitrary characteristics, and this dehumanization leads to a myriad of social problems, including violence and discrimination. The moral fabric of society is torn apart by such beliefs. White supremacy also stifles social progress. It creates divisions and fosters hate. Societies that embrace diversity and equality are more prosperous and harmonious. Rejecting white supremacy is not just a moral imperative, it is essential for societal well-being. Addressing these repercussions requires a concerted effort. It involves re-educating individuals and reforming institutions. Only then can we create a society that truly values equality and justice for all. Dismantling white supremacy begins with education. Teaching accurate history and promoting racial literacy are fundamental. Schools and communities must engage in open and honest conversations about race and discrimination. Promoting diversity and inclusion in all sectors is crucial. This involves creating policies that ensure representation and equity. Businesses, educational institutions, and governments must lead by example. Combating white supremacy also requires addressing systemic inequalities. This includes reforming the criminal justice system, ensuring equal opportunities in education and employment, and providing support to marginalized communities. Finally, individuals must take personal responsibility. Challenging one's own biases, standing up against racism, and supporting anti-racist initiatives are vital steps. Collective action can bring about significant change. Together, we can build a world where white supremacy is a relic of the past, a world where equality, justice, and humanity prevail.